Alright, what's up, Dragon Brood? I got done doing a bunch of other stuff. I decided to check and see what new stuff we got for Bloomburrow Day 3 previews. And there's like 30 cards, so we're going to have to go pretty fast unless we want this to be a super long video. So let's go. Alright, Iridescent Vine Lasher. This is 1 mana, 1/2, 1 black mana, I should say, 1/2, with Offspring 2, so you can pay the 2 and get a 1/1 copy. And it has landfall whenever a land you control enters. That's a sentence that I got wrong. Whenever a land you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to target opponent. So this is actually pretty solid, right? It's a lizard, and we know there's lizards in this set, so that's going to be a sub-theme. It's a 1/2 for 1, which isn't spectacular, but it's not bad. It's better than average. And you have a chance of getting 2 of these into play, which means every land's going to deal 2 damage to your opponent. This could actually be pretty good, considering that we've already seen several lizards that care about your opponent having lost life earlier in the turn. This kind of gives you an automatic trigger for that. Brambleguard Veteran, colorless green, 3/4, Raccoon Warrior. Whenever you expend 4, so when you spend your 4th mana to cast a spell that turn, raccoons you control get +1/+1 and gain vigilance until end of turn. This one I'm kind of on the fence about. Like, it's a 3 mana 3/4, which is pretty reasonable. And the upside, assuming you build the deck around this mechanic, you're going to have a lot of raccoons that care about you expending extra mana. So if it is working, this is pretty strong, considering not just getting the +1/+1, but giving all your stuff vigilance could help you in these creature battles that we're probably going to get stuck in Bloomburrow. So yeah, I don't want to write this one off just yet. This might actually be playable. All right, stick with me here. We're going to have to go through a translation, but this is Heartfire Challenger, a colorless and a red for a 2/2 mouse something. It looks like a mouse wizard I'm going to go with. It does have haste. It has prowess. Valiant. The Valiant ability of this is whenever this becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until end of turn. This card's good. I mean, seeing what we've already seen of the mice, and you're going to be playing a lot of really low-cost mice, there's a good chance that, like, every turn you have something target this, you could look at your top card and probably play it, because you'll be playing a bunch of things that cost 1, 2, or 3 for the most part, and mostly 1 or 2. So yeah, this is just a pretty sweet card. It could also give you something else that you could get during combat that maybe allow you to target the other mice you have as well. So lots of cool stuff this could lead to, and it is a 2/2 for 2 before you even take into account like prowess, haste, all the other good stuff it's doing. No clue why this card's coming up weird, but it's Splash Lasher, 3 colorless and a blue for a 3/3. Frog Wizard has offspring of a colorless and a blue. We've seen 2, we've seen 4, all colorless. This is actually a color mana and a non-colored mana. When this creature enters, tap up to 1 target creature and put a stun counter on it. Stun counter just means it can't untap till you remove all the stun counters. You remove 1 each turn. Yeah, I don't know. This is, in limited, is probably pretty good. For constructed, this is asking a lot. I mean, you pay 4 to get a 3/3, you tap something down for a turn. You can pay 5, tap 2 things down for a turn. You get a 3/3 and a 1/1. Like, it's reasonable, but probably not going to be played in constructed. All right, we're going to have to go back to the translations here, but this is HIV Spine Wolverine. It's a 3 green, so 5 mana for a 5/4. When it comes into play, choose 1. You put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. This fights target creature token or destroy target artifact or enchantment. That is a weird choice of things. It's not fight target creature. I think they're not sure on the translation. It might just be fight target creature. But either way, this is a 5 mana 5/4. You get to either put a +1/+1 counter on something. Could be itself, so you could get a 6/5 for 5. It could fight something, or you destroy an artifact or an enchantment. I think for the cost, you're probably passing on this because we just have other versatile cards in green that already do these other things. And I don't think this is the thing you want at this cost to do any one of those things particularly. More translations incoming. This is Contract Claw. It's a 1 red, 1/2. So maybe each color got a 1 mana 1/2. I don't know. But this is a lizard. And whenever you attack with 1 or more lizards, this card deals 1 point of damage to an opponent of your choice. So deal 1 damage to an opponent of your choice when your lizards attack. You can pay 1 and a red to put a +1/+1 counter on this card. Activates this ability only if an opponent had lost life this turn and only once per turn. Okay, so something interesting here. When you're attacking with your lizard, you get to deal a point. And again, we talked earlier about just having triggers to where you can trigger the lizard abilities by your opponent having lost life. So this does do that. But it is interesting that it says you can pay 2 once per turn to put a counter on it. It's not, well, I mean, I guess if you damage your opponent on their turn, you could pay on their turn too if you had the mana up. And there are ways to do that. So I don't know. This is likely playable. Like, this isn't as exciting as the other 1 mana thing we saw, because that one's just dealing damage every turn, and you don't have to put anything at risk. But it's not bad. I mean, there's a chance this is going to find a home somewhere too. All right, this one is Unprecedented Recycling. It's a colorless and a green. And it looks like it's a sorcery. And you have the option of gifting a card. So when you cast it, you can choose to gift or not. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. If you promise the gift, return 2 target permanents from your graveyard to your hand instead. This one's awkward. Like, I don't know if squirrels want this, or if general creature decks want this, or even decks that aren't playing creatures want this to get combo pieces back out of their graveyard. So, maybe, but it is just returning them the hand, so there's a good chance this won't get played and constructed. All right, we found another bird. Feather of Flight. Oh, well, we don't. It just has a bird frog on it. This is weird. Okay, Feather of Flight. Colorless and a white for an aura. It has flash. Enchant creature. When Feather of Flight enters, you draw a card. Enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has flying. Yeah, this is probably just a good constructed card, unless you're playing something that cares about enchantments. But, cool card. Now, this one I did see earlier because I got into a discussion with somebody about it on Twitter. But Misbreath Elder, it's a 1 green 2/2 Frog Warrior. At the beginning of your upkeep, return another creature you control to its owner's hand. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on this card. Otherwise, you may return this card to its owner's hand. There's a lot going on with this card. So it is a 2/2 for 1, which is great. However, you have to return another creature during your upkeep. That's not optional. And then you can put a +1/+1 counter on this, which is cool if you return something, so this gets to grow every time. But then if you don't have anything else, now you have the choice of returning this to your hand, so I guess you don't get stuck under this card's ability. You can just return it so you can have your other stuff start entering the battlefield, right? So this is interesting because I say enter the battlefield, staying on the battlefield. If you have things that have a bunch of enters abilities, then this is pretty cool, right? Because you get to reuse them a bunch. The problem is you're going to have a lot of situations where if you play this on turn 1 or 2, you're going to be able to fall behind fairly quickly because you're going to return some of your hand, then your opponent's going to kill this, and you're basically set back a turn now, right? That's not great. But if there's a world where the thing you're returning makes a token, gains some life, draws a card, whatever it happens to be, you could get enough incremental value off of that over a series of turns to where you don't mind. Or if it's just cheap enough to recast, right? If it's 1 or 2 mana and you can do that while still building up your board somehow, maybe that's a thing. But I'd have to really see what this card does. This is almost a card I don't think, because we see the 1 mana, we want to play it early. But I think it's possible this card isn't a turn 1 card. This might be like a turn 4 or 5 card. So then you can start reusing some frog abilities that enter or something like that. But it's probably not an early play card. This is more of an enabler for what something that has all those enters abilities is trying to do. We have Bark Form Harvester, 3 colorless for an artifact creature shapeshifter that happens to be currently in the shape of a... I was going to say squirrel, but it looks like it has spider legs coming out the back of it. I don't know what's happening there. But anyway, this is a changeling, so it has every creature type. It has reach, it's a 2/3, and for 2 mana you can put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. This is fine. It's a good filler in limited play, so you can just have more of that creature type that you want. But otherwise, it's just fine. Dewdrop Cure, 2 colorless and a white. You get the option of gifting a card with this sorcery. Return up to 2 cards, 2 target cards, each with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If the gift was promised, instead return up to 3 target creature cards, each with the mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay, good card here as an uncommon. You can pay 3 and return 2 creatures straight up. And they go to the battlefield, not even to your hand. And with rats, or I say rats. These are mice because these are very different things. You're probably playing this in the mouse deck. I don't know how we're going to talk about that yet. And you're going to be able to return all those 1/2 mana things, which is pretty strong. But if you just want to give them a card, you can return 3 things. And if it's pre-combat and you're returning some of those things that let you target different things and you trigger all those Valiant abilities, that could be worth giving them a card for. So this card's actually pretty cool and doesn't even need to be played in those decks in particular. There's a bunch of other decks like +1/+1 counter stuff with like Selesnya things or whatever, maybe even some Boros builds, that if you just return stuff out of the graveyard and just get more damage in, why not? So yeah, this is a pretty good little recovery card. Life Creed Duo, colorless and a white for a 1/2 flying bird. A bat bird, actually. That's weird. Oh, because it's a duo. There's a bat and a bird, obviously. Whenever another creature you control enters, you gain 1 life. So yeah, if you're looking for another card that pseudo replaces the veteran that got removed with Innistrad, no longer standard legal, this one's actually all right. It's a 2 mana, 1/2, and creatures come in the battlefield, you gain a life. That's kind of it. Yeah, playable, not exciting, but it does its job. Thistledown players. Playa, but I get it. They're talking about like performers. 2 colorless and a white, 3/3, mouse bard. When this attacks, untap target non-land permanent. I mean, again, in limited, probably really good. And constructed, 3 mana for a 3/3, and you're maybe untapping a creature. So unless you're playing things that care about, tapping to reuse their abilities or something, not the most exciting thing. So yeah, probably not a constructed player here. Finch Formation, 2 colorless and a blue for a 2/2 bird scout. Has offspring of 3, so this one's a little more expensive. It does have flying, and whenever this creature enters, target creature you control gains flying until end of turn. So you can pay 3 mana for a 2/2, give something else flying, or pay 6 mana for a 2/2 and a 1/1, give 2 things flying. Probably not being played in constructed, but very useful in limited play. Thought Shucker, which looks like a very sad rat, but colorless and a blue for a 1/3 rat rogue. Threshold, a colorless and a blue, you put a +1/+1 counter on this card and draw a card. Activate only if 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, and only once. Wait, not even once each turn, just once? Yeah, this card's not great. Like, if you're playing it in limited and you just need a way to draw a card and you need more rats, sure, but that's it. Bone Cache Overseer, 1 black mana for a 1/1, Squirrel Warlock. Tap it, pay 1 life, draw a card. Activate only if 3 or more cards left your graveyard this turn, or if you sacrificed a food this turn. It can kind of fuel itself with food, right? Like, you crack the food, you spend 1 of the life, so now you're still +2 life, but you get a card. Maybe squirrels might be playing this. I don't know yet. It is a 1/1 for 1, so whatever, with upside, which is cool. But we'll see what the squirrel decks end up looking like. But this could end up there. Dire Sight. Oh, that's cool. It's like you can see the animal face coming through the portal. That's kind of, it's like a thing that's going to eat the frogs, I guess. Anyway, 2 colorless and a black for a sorcery. Surveil 2, then draw 2 cards. You lose 2 life. Wait, sorcery. Isn't this like Read the Bones? No, Read the Bones wasn't Surveil, though. It might have been Scry, but I think it's Read the Bones otherwise. You would Scry 2 instead of draw 2. But yeah, you Surveil 2, draw 2, lose 2 life. This is a playable card. I mean, Read the Bones was playable for a few different things. This could be playable. It does have Surveil, so you can put stuff in the graveyard. It does draw you 2 extra cards, which is reasonable. So yeah, not bad. It's not exciting. It just does what it does. Scales of Shale. 2 colorless and a black for an instant. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each lizard you control. So very likely you can cast this for 1 mana. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains lifelink and indestructible until end of turn. This is a good little playable card. If you just want something to protect your creatures, keep them from dying to sweepers or spot removal, yeah, this would be fine for 1 mana. Conduct Electricity, which is looks like an otter's just going off here within a lightning storm. 4 colorless and a red for an instant, so 5 mana. It deals 6 damage to target creature and 2 damage to up to 1 target creature token. Yeah, this is just a limited card. Not much else to say about this. Steam Pass Charger, 1 colorless and a red for a 2/1 Lizard Warlock with Offspring 2. When this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to target player. It's fine. This is just going to be, do Lizard decks need this in the 2 slot? If so, it gets played. If not, no. Gilwin Moose, 4 colorless, green for a 6/6 Elemental Elk. It has Flash, Vigilance, Reach, Trample. That is a text box. Wow, okay. 6 mana for a 6/6 with Flash, Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. This has all the right words, and this makes me want to say, yes, this is playable. 6 is a lot. I'm trying to think, like, right now with 6, what we're doing. Like, we're playing dinosaurs of different varieties. We're trying to sneak stuff into play with Smuggler Surprise. I mean, this card's weird because it's literally bordering on playable. Like, has all the words and the stats to be playable. But there's also a lot of other sweet things that green is doing right now at 5 and 6 mana. So, man, I don't know. It wouldn't be a bad filler if you were just tight. This is a great budget card, right? If you are tight on some of the other rares that you see posted on my channel or anybody else's in a creature deck, and you're just like, man, I need something to fill that 5, 6, 7 mana slot, and you're playing some type of ramp or something, this is more than acceptable. I mean, something that has Trample and Flash and Reach and Vigilance, like, yeah, this is more than fine. Inkeeper's Talent, colorless and a green for a class card here. So at the beginning of combat on your turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then you can pay 1 green to go to level 2. Permanents you control with counters on them have ward 1. So that's sweet. It gives all your things with counters just ward, which is pretty cool. And then 3 colorless and a green to go to level 3, so 4 mana. If you would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many of each of those kinds of counters. Wow. I think this is playable because at the very least, you're paying 2 mana to put a +1/+1 on a thing every turn. It's very easy to get to 3 mana when you play this because you're not trying to play this on 2 necessarily. You're playing this on like turn 3, 4, 5 after you built up a couple of creatures. If you do, like, giving everything ward as a bonus is kind of nice. And then you just have the added option of, like, later on, you're like, well, okay, I guess I'll just pay 4. And then minimum, I'm putting 2 counters on something at the start of my upkeep. Of my combat phase. So that's actually worth it. Yeah, this is a cool card. I'm into it. Longstalk Brawl. For 1 green, you have a sorcery. You can gift a tapped fish. Such a weird statement. Choose target creature you control and target creature you don't control. Put a +1/+1 counter on the creature you control. If the gift was promised, then those creatures fight each other. So it's a fight spell that you can give your opponent a tapped 1/1 if you want to put a +1/+1 on your thing. I mean, necessary for green to have some other removal and limited, but in constructed, I think we just have some better bite and fight options. Treetop Sentries, 3 colorless and a green for a 2/4 with Reach. When this enters, you may forage. If you do, draw a card. Probably not playing this in constructed. 4 mana for a 2/4 with Reach. It's not terrible. It's okay. Possibly get a card if you have stuff in the graveyard. Or have a food to sacrifice. So, I don't know. I guess there's a world where this could be playable, but I wouldn't bank on it. Rin, the Relentless. 2 colorless, black blue. Why did I say green? 2 colorless, black blue for a 3/4. Legendary creature, Rat Rogue with Ward 2. Alright, so we got a 3/4 with Ward 2 for 4 mana. If a creature an opponent controls would die, you exile it instead, so it doesn't let the creatures go to the graveyard. Then at the beginning of each end step, you create X 1/1 black rat creature tokens. With this creature gets +1/+1 for each other rat you control, where X is the number of creatures your opponent controlled that were exiled this turn. Oh my goodness. Alright, so if you kill creatures, then you get to make a rat that's bigger for the other rats you control. Man, this card's a bit of a nuisance, isn't it? It's a 3/4 with ward. Your creatures are not going to go to the graveyard, so you turn off a bunch of options. Huh. If I'm playing blue-black rats, I'm probably playing this card. Like, it's just potential upside. Now, If you're playing against control, then like in best of 3, you probably sideboard it out because you don't really get to use the ability that much. But I mean, it is still hard to kill with Ward too. So I mean, maybe you leave it in. But yeah, this is at least playable. Beauregard Mentor, a green and a white for a rabbit soldier with trample, and its power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control. So a rabbit just cares about you having a lot of rabbits. All right. I mean, I guess that's cool. It has trample, which is awesome. Yeah, not a lot to say about this one. It kind of just is what it is. We have variations of this card in the past, and they're okay. If you're playing a lot of tokens, obviously this will be really good. But yeah, not much else to say about it. The infamous Cruel Claw. Oh, another weasel in the set. That's cool. So it's a colorless red-black for a 3/3 weasel mercenary that has menace, and then whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast that card by discarding a card rather than playing its mana cost. This is a cool card. Now, one, the art on this card is sweet, so like that's awesome. But 3/3 for 3 with menace, and if you damage a player, you just keep going from the top of your library until you find a non-land card, and then you can just cast it by discarding a card instead of paying its mana cost. Interesting. So it says you may cast the card by discarding a card rather than paying its mana cost, but I don't know if that means you can't just pay for it. Dawn's Truce, colorless and a white for an instant where you can gift a card. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. If a gift was promised, permanents you control also gain indestructible until end of turn. Yep, playable. Probably going to be pricey. Something a lot of commander players are going to want. I mean, worst case scenario, you just like tell an opponent, like, yeah, you get a card, my stuff doesn't die. Seems like a fair trade for 2 mana. You know what this is? This is basically like the white version of Heroes whatever, the green one, right? That's basically what this is. Like that's exactly what this is. But your opponent possibly gets a card. So like, yeah, I'm down with this. Downwind Ambusher, 3 colorless and a black for a 4/2 skunk. I think this is the first skunk we've seen. Skunk Assassin with flash. When this enters, choose 1. Target creature and opponent controls gets -1/-1 to enter turn. Destroy target creature and opponent controls that was dealt damage this turn. Yeah, probably not the card you're going to be looking to play in Constructed. Star Charter, 3 colorless and a white for a 3/1 Bat Cleric. It has flying. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained or lost life this turn, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a card with power 3 or less from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in random order. Ooh, 4 mana is a lot. 4 for a 3/1 flyer is a lot because it doesn't block anything, and you have to have it survive till the end of the turn to get to use its ability. But if it lives, if you gained or lost life, so basically if your life total changed at all, you're going to get a chance to look at cards and put something into your hand, which is probably going to be the majority of the things that you're playing. So, probably not getting played and constructed. But if it survives, this card would be a nuisance. Stargaze, which we decided to put the stars inside of a face of looks like a mouse or something, a rat. Stargaze is an X black sorcery. Look at the top X cards from the top of your library. Look at twice X cards from the top of your library.
There's an electrified
Put X cards from among them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. You lose X. Alright, so the way this sounds like it reads is you would pay, let's say 7. You get to look at the top 10 because X is 5, so twice X. You get to put 5 of those into your hand, the rest go into the graveyard, and then you lose 5. This card's weird, but if you're playing a life gain deck, this card's actually kind of sweet, right? Because you could load up your hand, who cares if you lose 4 or 5 life. So, playable, just not ridiculous. Byway Bartender, 2 colorless and a red, 3/3. Also funny that the raccoon gets to be the bartender, and it's a raccoon rogue. So you have a 3 mana, 3/3 with menace. Whenever you expend 4, and we talked about this earlier, it's when you spend your 4th mana to cast a spell for the turn, you may discard your hand. If you do, you draw 2 cards. This is probably okay, especially if you need some way to keep giving you fuel so you can keep hitting your expend, right? Because you need spells to cast. So that's probably why this exists. But it's a 3 mana, 3/3 with menace, and a reasonable upside within the theme of the deck is trying to be built for. So probably playable, but again, I think we need to see what the rest of the deck starts to look like first. And all right, somehow we got through all that. That was a lot of cards, y'all. I'm going to try to get this down as short as I can. But yeah, this is interesting because now we're starting to see a lot of stuff come together. We're starting to be able to see like what's going to be playable in certain builds and what isn't. Still a lot of good uncommons that have been coming out. So you'll have some decent options for budget while you're trying to get the rares that you need, which is super good. So like, yeah, lots of cool cards though today. Honestly, I think every day we're going to be seeing some pretty sweet stuff out of the set. So yeah, I expect Bloomburrow hype to keep on trucking into day 4. So come back and check out those reviews. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.